Welcome back to the Gray Zone podcast. I'm your host, Will, with my good friend and fellow communist sympathizer,
I
Timothy.
prefer revolutionary activist. My name's Timothy.
Today we're going to be talking about the great country of Vietnam. Initially, Vietnam was conquered by Napoleon III in July of the great year 1857. He conquered Vietnam in attempts to civilize the dangerous and wretched people who live there.
I think you mean exploit the economic opportunities found in Vietnam, the natural resources, and its market for French goods.
After a minor scuffling in 1859, Saigon was seized by France, and Vietnam, the Vietnamese people, signed a treaty with the good Frenchmen who agreed that we will now serve as Vietnam's protectorate and ruler.
Unfortunately, the Vietnamese were unable to mount an effective resistance to the invaders, the foreign Western opposition. As such, they ceded their conquered territories to France and was placed under French rule. They experienced severe exploitation in terms of economic and colonial territories.
Well, that's where I think me and you have gotten along pretty well so far, but I feel
Have we really?
I think we have. I feel like I actually disagree on this point here. I feel like the French government primarily served to help and benefit the Vietnamese people.
Interesting topic.
You know what we did? We built numerous pieces of infrastructure, including, but not limited to, roads, harbors, bridges, and many more. We also employed capitalist ideas.
It's interesting that you say that because although you speak of how great this capitalism ideology is,
It is.
the vast majority of the Vietnamese populace were deprived of the benefits of capitalism, as you speak of.
And is there a problem with that? I feel like I frankly disagree. I have a statistic here brought forth by my greatest statistician. We provided numerous job opportunities. We built a textile factory at Nam Dinh, which employed more than 5,000 people. Do you know how many 5,000 is?
How much is 5,000?
It is twice the size of this here building we are in.
We're not allowed.
I got another statistic here. 100,000 Vietnamese were employed in factories. 100,000 people. I feel you are just ungrateful.
Ungrateful. I think you fail to notice that these new policies led to increased exploitation of peasantry. But that's beside the point for you, isn't it?
The Vietnamese National Party was the leader of this so-called independence movement, and they launched numerous terrorist attacks.
I think you mean guerrilla group attacks on oppressive French outposts.
I believe terrorist attacks on French settlements and even indigenous garrisons. Indigenous, your own people.
Well, despite what he says, a resistance movement developed in Am Nam in 1885, led by the great scholar Pham Dinh Phung. He was oriented with past and traditionalist ideologies, and following him, there was a new national movement that arose in the 20th century, which of whom the spokesman was Phan Boi Chau, who rejected French rule, but not Western ideas, science, and technology. What do you have to say about this?
I know nothing of these people you speak of, but I do know of one man, Ho Chi Minh.
Ah, yes, the great revolutionary.
I wouldn't say that. Ho Chi Minh preached communism and evil, despicable socialist ideals, and he started a large-scale peasant revolt against the French.
You speak so passionately about our great revolutionary leader who managed to rally the people to his cause. I think we targeted the soft underbelly of a large evil beast. That's what we've done.
Sir, I think now it is time to discuss a point of main interest in the history of Vietnam, the Vietnam War.
I think you mean fending off Western influence, in which the Communist Party... Oh, I apologize. You don't like that word.
No.
But the Communist Party had gained the upper hand over their rivals, such as the non-communist Viet Nguyen, Vietnam Quốc Nhân Dân, VNQDD. The French determined to restore presence in Indochina and seize control of Cochin China.
Frankly, I disagree with that sentiment. I have a little statistic here. In January of 1968, the North Vietnam launched the Tet Offensive, where over 85,000 men, Southern good capitalist men, and allies were attacked, and hundreds of the cities in the South were destroyed.
Yes, well, I suppose, despite that, I guess the overarching message right now is that the Vietnam was divided into the communist North and the non-communist South at the 17th parallel.
Good side. In 1978, Vietnam signed an agreement to ally with, guess who? The Soviet Union of all nations. What do you have to say of that?
I have no comment.
I thought so. In the 1980s, well allied with this so-called Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Vietnam suffered a 400% inflation rate, and hundreds of thousands in the South and the North were without food or homes.
Funny you should say that, because I would like to mention that the only reason this was because our nation was unfit to deal with matters of and problems of peacetime, constantly forced into a whole generation of conflict, fighting with outside Western influences. And as such, we were unfit to deal with economic recovery. But despite that, we managed to pull through and improve foreign relationships, such as joining into the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. We also managed to increase our output in food, jobs in the public sector, exports, manufacturing, and GDP, which, by the way, rose or grew by an average of 8% annually throughout the 1990s.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I think we've run out of time on this podcast, but I can say for sure that I have won this debate.
I think I would like to add a comment.
I don't think you should.
Your shirt sucks. Mine is better.